Today at the National Press Club, the US Ambassador to Australia, Caroline Kennedy. She will discuss the outgoing Biden administration and touch on the impact a second Trump administration will have on Australia and the world. Caroline Kennedy with today's National Press Club address.
The United States of America has been much on our minds of late, as has the nature of our national relationship with an old ally at an historic point of political transition. But the US was front of mind long before November 5 for other reasons, with the AUKUS alliance, initially announced in late 2021, representing a hardening not just of ties with the US, but Australian enmeshment in US military capability and strategy. Our guest today is said to have played a key role behind the scenes to secure congressional support for the building blocks of AUKUS, which includes easing US export rules to allow the transfer of nuclear-powered technology and submarines. And she has given new meaning to the term soft power in her prominence in the Pacific and in
generations of shared sacrifice, mateship, friendship, and service that came before us. I felt it during my first week here when I visited the War Memorial and saw the diary of the Coastwatcher who arranged my father's rescue in the Solomon Islands. And then a week later, when I attended the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Guadalcanal in Honiara, and looked out over the graveyard known as Iron Bottom Sound. I felt it at the commissioning of the USS Canberra, the first Navy ship to be commissioned in another country, and I saw the presentation of the Star-Spangled Kangaroo. I've been welcomed by the men and women of the Australian Defence Forces at Stirling Navy Base and the SAS Regiment at Campbell Barracks, who work day in and day out alongside their US counterparts to keep this region safe. That's why the Biden administration advanced the most consequential and ambitious bilateral security agenda with Australia since World War II, making transformational commitments that will strengthen regional relationships, deter conflict, and preserve peace, while also investing in cutting-edge technology that will supercharge our economies and provide thousands of high-paying jobs. As maritime trading nations, the US and Australia depend on freedom of navigation and open sea lanes for our prosperity and our very existence. That's why AUKUS' deterrent effect is already a game changer. The progress in just the past 2 years may not yet be visible to the general public, but it is remarkable. The United States is sharing its nuclear technology for only the second time. All three countries have modified our export control regimes to increase license-free trade, which no one thought would ever happen. We have aligned and strengthened our protective security frameworks, bringing academia, industry, and government together. Australia is now one of only 2 countries eligible to compete for billions of dollars of funding under the Defense Production Act on the same terms as American companies. Collectively, we are investing in our industrial bases. We are training together, sailing together, and growing a new and younger workforce in the technologies of the future. Australian innovators and entrepreneurs are already developing world-leading companies in quantum, AI, autonomous vehicles, and the advanced capabilities of AUKUS Pillar 2. We've made tremendous progress, but we can't slow down. We are only 3 years away from the first rotational deployment of a Virginia-class submarine in Perth and 8 years from the first sovereign Australian nuclear-powered submarine, which will be in service for decades. There's funding available, there is huge opportunity. The greater risks are those of inaction and delay. To those who still question whether AUKUS is necessary, ask the Philippines and Vietnam what it's like to have your ships rammed and sunk by Chinese Coast Guard vessels. Or ask Japan what happens when missiles land close to your shore, or the Pacific nations when your most precious resource is destroyed by an industrial-scale fishing armada. Ask our private sector what the consequences are from the damage to undersea cables in the Taiwan Strait. The long delays and higher prices that are resulting from the Middle East conflict are insignificant compared to the global consequences of a conflict in this region. AUKUS is an existential investment in Australia's sovereignty and way of life, and you can't put a price on that.
Pillars of AUKUS. If I ask you about Pillar 1, which is about the submarines, as you say, it's 3 years till the US submarines come here, 8 years till we have our own sovereign-powered ones. But There is a discussion both in the US, reflected in the Congressional Research Service, and in Australia about whether it actually makes sense for us to have our own submarines. You know, isn't it easier and probably more pragmatically sensible for the US to keep the submarines and base them here to achieve the same strategic interests as happens in, say, NATO, in its alliances with the US, and instead have Australia invest in things like long-range anti-ship missiles, drones, whatever loitering munitions are. I'm just reading the Congressional Service report here. Could you tell us, as one of your last bits of advocacy, why is it so much better for us to have sovereign submarines here, and before we even get to the question of building them here?
Well, first of all, it's an Australian decision of what is best for Australia. It's not a United States decision. And the decision about the AUKUS submarines was made by the Australian government. We respect the sovereignty of Australia. You don't have foreign bases in Australia, and we are well aware of that. So these are just rotational deployments. But I think that what it really shows is the collaboration and strong partnership that we have in working together in this region, which is the most important for our future. I mean, everyone knows the history of the 21st century is going to be written in the Indo-Pacific. And I think AUKUS is a critical way. It's already having a huge impact in deterrence and in keeping the peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific.
Rosie Lewis.
Rosie Lewis from The Australian. Donald Trump has said US allies should pay more for America's protection. So is Australia spending enough on defence? And on the other side of the ledger, what's the strategic value to the US of Australia's geographic position?
Well, Australia should make its own decisions about how much it's spending. And I know that your defence spending is projected to rise. And I think that's not just because of Donald Trump. That's because of the changing geostrategic forces in this region. And your leaders all describe it, as do ours, as the most dangerous time since the Second World War. So all countries, Japan is doubling its defense budget. So I think that most people are in agreement with President Trump on that. Australia is also contributing to the US industrial base in helping us accelerate the production of Virginia-class submarines, as well as investing in your own defense industrial base and standing up AUKUS and transforming the workforce here. So that is a massive undertaking that is happening here, and it's amazing to watch it at the beginning, and I can't wait to see how it grows over time and all the new jobs and industries that are created here. And in terms of what is the value to the United States of Australia's location, well, the Pacific is really big, and we are a Pacific nation. We have a long border on the Pacific. We have the state of Hawaii. We have relationships with the COFA states. This region is critical to our economy. It's critical to our identity. We have communities in the United States from all across the Pacific. And Australia shares our values. You're committed to the rule of law, to individual freedom. And our militaries have fought and sacrificed for our freedom and our rights for more than 100 years. So I think that it's not only about location, but it's about values and ideals and a sense of what kind of future world we want for our children. And we're aligned on all those.
Andrew.
I came downstairs. What surprises you most about Australia? And after 2.5 years, I think I have an answer. And I'm still surprised that Australia doesn't always appreciate how important it is. Australia may be a middle power, but to the United States, you are number one. We have no more trusted or capable ally. In every dimension of our relationship, I've seen the United States rely on Australian leadership and experience. Australia is no longer America's deputy sheriff, or whatever the critics like to say. Australia is our partner and often our teacher as the United States navigates a multipolar world. That's true in our bilateral relationship, it's true in multilateral fora, and it is vital in this region. The President's belief in the United States as global power can be summed up by William Butler Yeats, who wrote, "Think where man's glory most begins and ends, and say, my glory was I had such friends." Australia is hands down our most glorious friend. And that's because of the generations of shared sacrifice, mateship, friendship, and service that came before us.
I hope you've enjoyed this re-edit of Caroline Kennedy, the outgoing US Ambassador to Australia's speech to the National Press Club in Canberra. It has been prepared to promote the infographic that the Submariners Association of Queensland installed at Mt Coot-tha, right next to Camp Coot-tha Place, and also was re-edited to heighten people's awareness of the importance of the Australian-US alliance as we look to the installation next year of the World War II Coastwatchers Memorial, which is going to be installed at Newstaed Terrace Park in a wonderful pagoda along the river. And with that, I thank you and wish you a Merry Christmas.